Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Titus Kramer. I'm a third-year student of political science, specializing in international relations. And it was, in fact, in my foreign policy class here at Purdue where I learned about Putnam's two-level game. I would like to start off with a quote by Robert Strauss, the US Special Trade Representative, who said he spent as much time negotiating with domestic constituents and members of Congress as he did with foreign trading partners. What does this show us? For me, this means that domestic and international politics are very closely linked, especially when it comes to international negotiations. Now, before Putnam approached this topic, there were several great political scientists who were already working on the intersection between the spheres of domestic and international. Now, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into the intricacies of each of these political scientists' great work. However, to generalize, the main point is that the existing literature on the links between the two spheres had already provided lists of how the domestic would influence the foreign policy, and as well as the generic observations of how they are linked. However, for Putnam, this was not enough. Putnam pushed for a more adequate account of domestic determinants of foreign policy. He stressed the focus on parties, social classes, public opinion, rather than simply focusing on institutional arrangements. He wanted to move beyond simple institutional arrangement and rather seek a theory that effectively integrates both spheres. Now, in his work, Diplomacy and Domestic Politics, he puts forward a conceptual framework how diplomacy and domestic politics interact. How this framework of the two-level game works will be discussed now. Let's say we have a negotiation. Make it an international negotiation between country A and country B. The two gentlemen sitting here in the front are the two chief negotiators. We must assume that they have no individual policy preference, but simply seek to reach an agreement that will satisfy their constituencies. Now, in the first stage, the bargaining will take place between the two negotiators. Eventually, they might reach a tentative agreement. This will be called level 1. On the second stage, there will be a separate discussion of the constituents whether to ratify the initial agreement reached in level 1. This means level 2. Now, the guys at the back there, they could be parliamentary figures, spokespersons of agencies, interest groups, etc. Now, if they disagree with the agreement from level 1, they must amend it at level 2 and then return to level 1 where the discussion must be reopened. This shows domestic opinion and public pressure can have a very large impact on foreign policy. For example, we saw this in the United States with the Vietnam War.
The documents, if you study the Johnson administration as well, there's no question that the anti-war movement, the domestic opposition to the war, constrained the military from doing more intense options, more serious invasions of North Vietnam, of using more, more weapons of war, of even potentially using tactical nuclear weapons, which was on the table at one point. There's no question that domestic opposition got in the way of that.
So this clearly shows that neither of the two levels can be ignored by decision makers on either side. Now, one of the reasons for that is put forward by Putnam evolves around the idea of win sets. A win set is defined as all possible level 1 arrangements that would win level 2, or we could also say that would be ratified by level 2. Now, the larger the win set, the more likely it is that an agreement will be made in level 1. This is because, I apologize, this should say A1. This is because agreements can only be made when the win sets overlap. So the larger the win sets, the larger the chance is that there will be made an international agreement. Now, let's keep in mind that when this framework was created in 1988 by Robert Putnam, the world looked quite a bit different. Phones looked roughly like this. And now we have a world of AI, social media, and so on. So let's hear from Lindsay Gorman about the dangers of social media and how this might change or impact Putnam's theory.
Powerful, and they're constantly making choices about what viewers see when. And I think there's a real concern that with TikTok's links to China, that TikTok could decide to uprank certain content that the Chinese Communist Party would want Americans to see and downrank other.
Right, so this is interesting. Now go back to our visualization. If one country can theoretically influence public opinion in another country, like this, wouldn't this have an impact on the win set and through the pressure on the negotiator? Wouldn't this increase the win set of country A from A1 to A2? Not only would this make it more likely to reach an international agreement, but it would also be more likely that this agreement made us more favorable to country B than it was before. Now, clearly you can see that this has major implications on how diplomacy is conducted or will be conducted in the future. Now, Putnam couldn't have known about these technological advancements, but I'm not sure that's an issue, because his theory proposes a general framework of the two-level game. The two-level game in general holds, even in the world of social media and AI. It holds in a world even more interconnected than ever, and it's most likely to hold for many years to come. Thank you.